the projection as in how the debt structure of the economy plays in terms of nation. But let's go back to our mid-year revenue budget, and I would like to look at some key factors that reflected this time round. Government did not necessarily increase or introduce any new budget, but rather revise or improve their revenue measures. So some of the measures that we've begun earlier this month, that is in the beginning of the year, where that there was a removal of selected VAT exemptions of about 0.04% of the overall GDP. We also saw the complete removal of discounts on benchmark values, which constitute about 0.24% of the gross domestic product. So the government also decided to undertake the E-level reforms to close the loopholes or leakages and also improve patronage and enhance yield. There were a lot of discussion and debate towards the implementation, the whole conversation about E-levy, where some said they would not pay. Necessarily, the discussion were on the percentage of how much should be the appropriate and acceptable rate. But although that happened, there was a conclusion, and still we are all paying the levy. Many have constituted about the rate of increase and how much government has made, which are hoping that hopefully by the end of the year we'll get a revised figures in terms of how much government have made on the electronic transaction levy. There was also implement the unified property rate collection. This is some policy that many have said are questioning how government intends to institute that. I'm sure you've received text messages from the Ghana Revenue Authority in regards to how much you must pay on every property you own. If not, then you have to revisit the GRA to ensure the right thing is done. But it's also constituted about 0.02% of the gross domestic product. In terms of growth and sustainability levy, which is also something that reflects in most of our tax payment, government has also decided to intensify the implementation of the VAT, that is the e-invoicing system, to enhance compliance. There was also the need to increase VAT rate from 12.5% to 15%, which is an increase of 2.5 basis points, with the National Health Insurance, which gets straight levies maintained at 2.5% each, and earmarked proceeds for road construction. So the key conversation had been on why the increase in the VAT rate to 15%. Businesses are lamenting that it is exorbitant and the government should rather revise it downwards, because the economic factors and the ease of doing business, the cost of doing business has affected their production. Already, producer price inflation has gone up, where the price of raw materials has seen an increase by more than 30% in the medium term in the first quarter of this year. Revision of the excise tax for selected items and revision of income-based taxes. So these are some of the revisions that we saw, which total about 1.35% of gross domestic product. So these are some of the revenue, but let's look at some expenditure and revenue aspects which will come on the screen shortly. But these are some monetary sector development that were made mention of in the mid-year budget. Well, first of all, let's look at the interbank weighted average rate, which came up at 26.01%, which was adjusted upwards. The average lending rate of banks is now 31.15%. This was adjusted because of the increase in inflation monetary policy rate, which was adjusted upwards to 30.0%, meaning that the cost of borrowing has gone up, and this necessarily will affect businesses who need capital to ensure operation of their activities. And sometimes too, people are wondering whether the rate of the cost of borrowing by the interbank rate is something that will affect the operations subsequently. But with the adjustment of the bank's average lending rate, meaning that indeed the businesses will need more money to have access to the cost of getting money at the banks is more than before, which is now costly. Inflation rate as of now stands at 42.5%. You can see there. This was released by the Ghana Statistical Service, with key indicators such as commodities like tomatoes and dried fish play a key role in reflecting this time round on the basket of goods that were taken into consideration. Not forgetting that rates of utility, electricity, water, and housing also played a critical role in that figure there. Not forgetting also that in June 2023, the Ghana cedi depreciated against the dollar by 22.0%, while it depreciated against the euro by 23.38% and against the pound sterling at 26.3%. So these are the key reflection of the current stance of how our key indicators are looking at us at now. But let's also look at the macro snapshot of what were said by the Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta before the House of Parliament, which currently are taken into consideration in terms of policy discussion of the economy. So the macroeconomic performance, this looking at the target that have been revised, the overall gross domestic growth rate was targeted at 3.7% for 2022. The outcome were targeted at 3.1% for 2022. That is the initial target that we gave for ourselves as a country, that we can grow. Looking at the factors at place, we said we can grow by 3.1% as at 2022, the December. But with the current circumstances, the Finance Minister, with his consulted with his team, have decided to revise it to 1.5%, taking into consideration the impact of the gross domestic debt exchange program and many factors and elements such as the down rating of our economy and many considered factors. Another element that saw downward revision was our non-oil GDP growth rate, which was revised from 3.8% to 1.5%. Another thing that was also revised downwards is our end-of-year inflation rate, which initially was 54.1%, but now has been revised downwards to 31.3%. We saw a fiscal deficit that is on cash basis revised downwards from 10.7%. Initially, as at 2022, it was 6.6%, but in our budget for 2023, the target then was 10.7%, but now we've seen a downward adjustment to 6.4% with more, in terms of primary balance, the negative 3.2% to negative 1.3%. But the import cover, which is very important in terms of how much money we have in balance our trade deficit, is just 2.3% revised downwards to 0.8%, which is something that government needs to critically look at to ensure that we have enough import cover just within this short period. Else, it will be very critical for our economy, because we know already we are an import-driven economy. How strong is our domestic production to withstand the shocks that this may happen?